Well, hello there. Welcome to the Post Sunday app. We are in one of our children's ministry rooms. So we just had our first real Awana in here this last Wednesday.
Yeah.
And wow, it was fun.
It was packed.
It was.
A lot of rooms were packed.
It was. So I just really enjoyed that. So it's good to be in here with you, Daniel, to talk about the sermon. Genesis 3, 8 through 24, sin's destruction. So this was, I think in our care group we talked about how that phrase of, I'm not sure who said this, but we're more sinful than we realize, but we're more loved and welcome than we can ever imagine. And just seeing the full effect of sin in our own lives, as we talked about in care group, in the world around us, in our marriages and work, relation with God. It was really good discussion as a care group. So thanks for preaching.
Yeah, and hopefully as we think about, kind of like what it said, as we think about the devastation that sin causes, it causes us to turn to Christ, more independence, and also just enjoy, recognizing, man, if that's what sin can do, and God's redemption through Christ is even greater, how great it must be. So hopefully that's encouraging to people. Definitely.
Well, one question that came in about this passage was the crushing of the head of the serpent.
Yeah.
Maybe, how exactly is that referencing the prophecy about Christ? Is that too much of a stretch? How should we view that?
Yeah, so the verse is in Genesis 3:15, and God is talking to the serpent, who we know is Satan, and from the rest of Scripture. And in verse 15, he says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And the ESV translation has chosen to use a singular pronoun, that he, to refer to the woman's offspring. So the question is this referring to the gospel? Is this a prophecy of Christ? And I said it was yesterday. I didn't go into a lot of detail. There's a couple reasons, and we won't get into all of them here, but just a couple things. First of all, even in this verse, there's a sense of defeat for the serpent. And so what's causing, if God's cursing the serpent and there's a sense of defeat, what is that defeat? Well, it has to do something with his offspring. And so this isn't a full-fledged, here's who Jesus will be and here's all the atonement and all that. But there's this hint of an offspring who's going to deal a blow to the serpent, and even in a larger context to this curse that's taken place. And even in that idea that there's going to be offspring, that's a sense of hope as well. So there's death, but there's going to be an offspring, and this offspring is going to be, this future offspring is going to be the one who defeats the serpent. And so there's a lot of hints through Genesis, and I won't go into all of them, but you go into Genesis 4, and she bears a son. Eve has a son, and she says, I've gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And I think what she's saying there is this is beginning to take place, that I'm having children. This is a good thing. Eve is called Eve by Adam because she's going to be the mother of all living things, it says in verse 20 of Genesis 3. So there's this idea throughout Genesis that they're looking forward to a coming seed, a coming descendant who's going to reverse the curse. In Genesis, I think it's Genesis 5, Lamech has a son, calls him Noah, which means rest. It says, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and the painful toil of our hands. So he's hoping maybe this is the descendant. And all throughout Genesis, you see this idea of descendant and offspring. Genesis 12 and 13, Abraham is promised a seed who will be given the land, a descendant who will be the instrument by which all the nations are blessed. And you come to Galatians, and Galatians 3, Paul tells us that prophecy made to Abraham was in reference to Jesus Christ. So when you kind of put all those things together, you see in Genesis, the big story is telling us that there's going to be a coming descendant who's going to deal with sin's curse, and the first hint of that is there in Genesis 3:15. So that's how I read Genesis 3:15. Some people would disagree, but I think it's there.
Yeah, okay.
And then also as you go through Genesis, even the outline is in terms of generation. These are the generations. These are generations. Right. So he's constantly bringing to mind that humanity began here. There's a fall, and now there's descendants, and it's through this one descendant that the curse is going to be lifted. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. So if if the fall brought such a far-reaching effect, right? Your three principles of the passage were sin has destroyed my relationship with God,
Yeah.
my relationship with family, and my relationship with my work.
Right.
Okay. One question that came in said, well, I see how my relationship with God is restored through Christ, but what about my family and my work and even other areas? Are they restored also? Because it seems like my relationship with God is fully restored through
Right.
Christ. What about my relationship with my family and work?
When those other relationships are restored as our relationship with God is restored. And so as we mentioned, in that relationship with my family, it's restored because now I have a relationship with God, and I have a model for how I'm supposed to treat my wife, and I have someone who can provide me the means to have my heart changed so I can treat her the way that I'm supposed to. And same with work. Now I can do my work unto the Lord. And so that relationship with the Lord being restored causes all the other effects of the curse to be dealt with as well.
So restoration can happen.
Right, yeah.
Because of the first one.
Right.
Being restored. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Adam and Eve were protected from evil by God in
Yeah.
the garden by saying, don't go over that tree.
Right.
Don't eat that fruit. How is that, or is that a model for us as we think about parenting? So a parenting question here.
Yeah.
As we think about our children, how much do we protect them from evil versus kind of gently sowing into them, here's what's coming?
Yeah.
You know, where's that line of being wise, not to let the world take the lead on exposing them to sin, but also not wanting to expose them too early?
Right.
Is that a fair question?
Yeah, it is, and
asking
I don't think there's a uniform answer for every given culture and every kid. I think it begins with pointing them to the positive. Okay, this is what it looks like to pursue a relationship with God, and then as circumstances and situations enter that child's life, we make them aware of them. And say, hey, you see this right here? Maybe it's an attitude they have had, or it's something that someone else in their sphere of influence is doing or communicating to them. You say, look, here's how this action fails to glorify God. And so it's not a matter of just putting fences around an activity or an action or a thought and saying, don't do this. It's saying, look, here's your relationship with God, and here's how this dishonors God or fails to help you achieve your purpose of glorifying God. There's conversations about sexuality that I'm having with my kids that if they were in a different culture, we wouldn't be having.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they would need to know all of the examples of perversions from God's standards that you can deal with. But because of the culture that we're in, the things they're exposed to, the images they're exposed to, there's some conversations we've had like, hey, you know what you saw there? That's not how God would want you to live. And so we can't protect our kids from the evil in the world. As Paul said, then you have to go out of the world. But we can say, okay, as you're exposed to the world, here's how you handle it in a way and think about it in a way that's consistent with what God has told us about reality and how to worship Him.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
How have you handled that?
Well, I think you said it well, in that each child is different.
Yeah.
As it just so much calls for us just to spend time with our kids, because to know that child well enough to, one, what they're ready to be exposed to.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have to take the initiative before it comes to them to start exposing
That's true.
them. But two, knowing what they've been exposed to. So knowing when they're ready, if we need to take the first steps to talk about an issue. But second, knowing what they're being exposed to and having that relationship built so that they feel very open to talk to you. Because sometimes I think a child, it's sin. They know it's sin, so they're afraid to talk to you
Right.
about it because they
Right.
think that, well, Dad's going to think I'm bad if I talk
Right.
to him about something that I saw inadvertently or something like
Right.
that. But having that open relationship, it's one of the tougher things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
this aspect of
Absolutely.
parenting. So, well, great. Well, you said Jason Alligood, a pastor friend of ours, joked that, did you know there's 50 chapters in Genesis?
Yeah,
So we're not going to go through every
Right.
verse
Right.
here, right?
Right, but
Looking forward to keep going.
chapters 4 and 5, read chapters 4 and 5 this next week.
Okay.
I think we're going to try to cover some stuff from chapters 4 and 5.
Okay,
But,
great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.
And thank you, too, for tuning in to the Post Sunday app. Hope you have a great rest of your day.